morning. Good morning. In a few minutes, I am going to introduce our last stewardship speaker, Kelly Kelleher, who will be sharing his thoughts on living generously, and then invite all of us to live into God's generosity and make a pledge to Christ's ministry at St. Mark's for the coming year. But before I do that, I would like to share a few of my own thoughts about this year's stewardship campaign. It has been a challenging one. The committee has been very busy. A consultant has been engaged. I can't imagine one thing that the committee could have done more to help make this day a success. Because for months now, they have known that this will be a year of challenge. A number of wonderful, gracious, and generous supporters of St. Mark's have gone on to join what is often called the Church Triumphant, and we will see many new names on All Saints' Day appear on the tablet in the memorial garden. This is a challenge we're facing, even in the midst of welcoming in new members to our congregation. And our wardens, I believe, have very well articulated this in the letter that we all received this week. But my thoughts this morning are not so much about this challenge. Rather, I would like us to look at a far bigger picture. My thoughts tend, to be honest, to reflect on some milestones for me as your rector and for St. Mark's as a parish. Positive ones, I hope. I try generally not to get too personal in sermons. You know, they teach us at the theological cemetery. It's not about you, it's about the gospel. But perhaps you will forgive me for a little bit of waxing personal this morning, because this year saw several anniversaries for me. This past June marked my 25 years as a priest in the Episcopal Church. Next year will see my 10th year serving as your rector, and I am very much looking forward to doing that. So as you may imagine, anytime we have anniversaries cropping up, also introspection tends to crop up as well. I believe we've celebrated a number of accomplishments together. You, I, the Holy Spirit. Namely, what I would call helping St. Mark's live into the 21st century. Becoming a more 21st century parish in some ways. Our campus has become even more beautiful than before. Our technology has taken a role among us that I believe it takes in the world. It's so much a part of our lives. And with the help of Dave Yeager, we've been able to embrace it. And we see it in our parish community more and more. Our worship together has been enhanced. The traditional aspects of Anglican worship that I love so much, St. Mark's has embraced in the last decade, and we celebrate that today. We celebrate our wonderful music program and this magnificently completed organ together. But more important than any of these things, I believe, is our theology that has embraced inclusion of the entire human family and a self-rededication to ministry beyond this parish. These are things to give thanks to God for, and for which we have been richly blessed. I've also had regrets, things that could have been done better, perhaps, or I could have done differently. That reminds me that only hindsight vision is truly 2020. And I know I'm not alone in that. One anniversary that we all observed together a few weeks ago was the 15th year remembrance of the events of 9/11. The day, in the words of country music artist Alan Jackson, the world stopped turning, reminding us all of what is truly important in life. Many of those things are embodied and lived out through this community of faith. I vividly remember the last time I was at the World Trade Center in New York. It was in the 1990s, and I was there to hear a remarkable little bishop speak big and bold words. He was from South Africa, a country in the throes of apartheid, and somehow he managed in all of that suffering to exude the Holy Spirit with his every breath, something he still does today. If you've ever heard Desmond Tutu speak, you have been moved. Tutu has often been asked how he finds and maintains his amazing spirit of optimism amidst trial and challenge and the changes in life. His response is simple. We are made by goodness for goodness, he says. How many times have we heard that you and I are made in the image of God? But how often do we let it sink in? How often do we really get it or take it to heart? Not often enough, I think. I recently finished this wonderful little book by Archbishop Tutu and his daughter, who is also an Anglican minister. It's called simply Made for Goodness and Why This Makes All the Difference. I cannot recommend it more highly to everyone. Both authors affirm not only God's great goodness, but our goodness as well. Being made by and for goodness is a reminder that we can never go beyond where God can find us. No doubt or fear, no regret or anxiety, no, I wish I could have done it this way or that way, or not any way at all, is too big for God to bring healing and redemption and love. These have been helpful and inspiring thoughts to me as I look back on the past years of my life and ahead into the future and the hopes for how we are going to serve Jesus Christ together as a community in the years ahead. The authors also assert, and I don't know about you, but for me this is a hugely difficult concept, that it is only by letting go of the desire to be perfect and get it right all the time that we allow God room in our lives to transform us and make it right in God's image. Somehow, we have to accept, they tell us, our innate goodness and our release of this competitive desire to allow God to do the greatest goodness in our lives and in our world through us. What C.S. Lewis would call beyond our personality. Maybe my seminary professors were right, and it really isn't about us, it's about God, a good and generous God, whose ministry through this place to a desperate and broken world we are called to support and affirm this morning. I'd like to end with just a little quote from this book. It's theology, it's poetry, it's history, it's a lot of things between the covers. A piece of poetry. With each breath you choose, my child, for you are free. Will you breathe with me the breath of life? Will you claim the joy I've prepared for you? Will you seek me out and find me here? Will you whisper the prayer? Will you breathe with my breath? Now I'd like to ask Kelly to come forward and speak a few words of generosity. Kelly.
Morning.
Living generously, the theme of this year's stewardship campaign, carries with it a lot of warm and fuzzy feelings, giving of gifts, occasional extending of the hands and embrace. Indeed, this is how we should introduce the concept to our children, the idea of a community coming together as one. But generosity, the word, comes from the Latin for nobility, to live above and beyond the daily and the pedestrian, and therefore must include the hard parts of generosity, rising above our pettiness and our insecurities and our selfishness, and to consider his beloved community. Jesus spoke of nobility, a generosity beyond merely living in this world, in the behavior of the widow who put her last 2 copper coins in the plate. Now, of course, the Pharisees gave much more out of their abundance and did so very publicly, but they were not suffering as a result. This was a trite and well-torn, full story that didn't mean a lot to me for many years. Until a couple of months ago. Most of you know that I'm privileged to spend time up at North Central Correctional Complex, medium security prison up in Marion, with Derek and some other men, learning about grace and forgiveness. And last Christmas, the 200 men of the Toastmasters Club invited me to give their annual holiday speech. Now, I was not allowed to provide them any material goods for the holidays or gifts, so instead I chose to give them some words. And I was honored to do so, and I told them that about patience at Nationwide Children's Hospital where I work, and about the inspiration that both the prisoners and the children have been to me over the years, and how the faith of the prisoners has been an inspiration and guided me in many things I do, and revealed God's love through their actions in ways that are often invisible to the men themselves. Well, 3 months ago, the Toastmasters Club invited me back for their annual award ceremony. And at that meeting, the president of the club stood up, reminded everybody that the average prisoner makes about $2.25 a day there, working in the yard. And they reminded me that the savings that they do get are often used to pay for court fines, fees, lawyers, and sent back to family members that have been left behind. So most of the men have very, very little. Nevertheless, these men surprised me with a giant cardboard check unveiled, made out to Nationwide Children's Hospital Cancer Center for $1,700, donated to the hospital. This represented a huge portion of their earnings and savings, and it was given to sick children they will never meet. It was immensely humbling, and I struggled to find words at that time, and I still do, to say how important that was to see such a gift. Generosity is not about warmth and reward. It's a nobility of the spirit, living and giving from a place of faith. These prisoners of NCC show me how very real and meaningful giving to others can be, especially when given from a faith that does not care about status or reward or even gratitude. It will take me many more years to learn the generosity of these men and the widow, but I pray I become like them every day. My wife, Andrea, and I have been given too much, and it constitutes a great temptation, in my opinion. We've often struggled in our faith journey, treating others as we want to be treated. We struggle with how much to give each year, how to divide it up among all the worthy causes, how much we care about the individual people in these causes, and whether the money we donate will be used in a way that we think is best employed for God's work. And we struggle with how challenging it is to still have these conversations after 30 years of marriage. But in the end, God knows our hearts. He knows that He's been generous beyond measure to us. He knows that every penny of our money and every minute of our time is not ours, it's His. And that we're only borrowing. I hope you'll join me in reflecting on the generosity of the prisoners as you ponder your stewardship this year. I hope you'll continue to walk with and support me as I endeavor to become more like the widow and the prisoners. At this time, to ask for a quiet moment for everyone to reflect on their stewardship. I ask you to notice that there are pledge cards in the aisle and also in the back. And if you feel so moved to fill out a pledge card, and as the song starts, please bring forward the pledge and fold it in half and put it in the alms basket. And we thank you for your humble consideration of God's mission on this earth.